When I was a kid, I used to love seesaws, and to build one is easier than you think, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So what you'll need for this project is a second-hand tire, a hacksaw blade, some paint as well as some paint brushes, a couple of bits of timber, some glue, some screws, a sander, a drill, as well as a jigsaw and a compound miter saw. Your first step is cutting the tire, and basically we need to find the center of the tire. So here's a quick trick. You'll see a marking on your tire, whether it's a 13-inch tire, 15-inch tire or 17-inch tire. I've got a 13-inch tire, and that translates into 330 millimeters. Take a ruler like this, mark out anywhere on this side, and find out where you find 330 millimeters, like this. Where you see it matching up, mark off, and that's your center. Now that we've marked out on the top as well as the sides, turn your tire over and continue the lines right the way through so that they match up just ahead of cutting. Now it's time to cut our tire in half. I'd recommend that you either use a hacksaw blade like this, or if you do have one, use an angle grinder, which might be easier. I've already pre-cut a tire like this over here, and you can actually see the steel reinforcement bead that runs along the edge over here. So this is probably going to be the most difficult part of the project, but with a little perseverance and endurance, it'll all be worth it. Now I'm going to measure up in order for our wooden cleat that'll fit inside here, which will give a bracing and support to the whole seesaw structure. And I can see here I've got approximately 545 millimeters for the length. I'm actually going to take off 10 millimeters on both sides because you'll have a square block in a round tire and that won't fit. The next measurement is the width of the tire. And you can see it's approximately 140 millimeters here in length. The final measurement that you want is the actual depth of the tire. I've got 110 millimeters over here, which is perfect. Okay, so I've got my measurements and I'm going to transpose them onto my piece of wood. So I'll start out with the length first. So that's 525. Then for the inner pieces that will just miss out on the tire here, I've got a depth of 110 millimeters. I'm going to cut away 30 millimeters just to clear the tire. And then I'm going to do the same on each 4 corners. Now that I've got all my measurements, I'm going to cut off the end of our cleat with a compound miter saw, and these smaller sections I'm going to use a jigsaw just to remove those out of the way. Now the wood that I'm using, you can see, is just ordinary pine wood, but it's a good, nice, chunky piece of wood, which is 32 millimeters in thickness, and then obviously the length is dependent on your tire.
Start by cutting the cleat to the correct length. Using a miter saw makes the job quick and easy. To cut the cleat to size so it will fit into the tire, make use of the jigsaw to remove the sections that you marked out. Remember to let the jigsaw do the work.
Now that we've got our cleat cut, I'm going to check if the tire fits over it. Perfect. Now later on, we'll actually secure the cleat to the rubber with a couple of screws. And the purpose of the cleat here is really just to keep the shape of the tire, as well as to attach our longer piece of wood, which will actually become the seesaw eventually. Now the next step, I'm going to separate these 2 pieces and I'm going to secure our cleat to our longer piece of wood. But in order to do that, I need to find the center of both pieces of wood. Okay, so now I'm going to line up the 2 pieces of wood, our cleat with our seat area. Then I'm going to mark off areas where I'll actually do my pilot holes, and then I'll glue and I'll screw it together. Now that we've got all our pilot holes done, I'm actually going to quickly trace out the shape. Why I'm doing this is when I release the clamps and I add glue, I'll at least know where to place it back before I screw it down.
Adding wood glue before securing the cleat to the top board of the seesaw ensures a long-lasting bond. Because we are using 32mm thick pine timber, the pilot hole ensures that the screw passes through the top board easily, while securing the 2 pieces of wood together. We can get rid of our clamps, and then we're going to flip it over, and we need to router the edges.
Obviously, kids are going to be using this, so we'd rather be safe so that they can enjoy it for much longer.
Using a round over bit in the router helps to take care of any sharp edges. Keeping the router moving at a steady speed while stabilizing the power tool will give you a smooth, rounded finish.
Now onto the handles. If you can find a good set of handles at your local hardware store, perfect. But I'm going for a custom set, and I actually want them quite big so that they are nice and chunky for the kids to hold onto. So I've got a piece of wood here, 32 millimeters in thickness. So I'm going to use the dimensions of about 200 millimeters, and this will form the width of the handles. And then I'm going to divide the piece into two sections. Now, because I've got 200 millimeters in width here, I'm also going to mark it at 100 millimeters. Right, so for the width of the handle, I'm going to use approximately 30 millimeters on both sides. And then I'm going to make the height of the handlebar about 50 millimeters. So for the top of the handle, I'm going to use a round form like a lid that I've got over here and just match up where it meets our middle line over there. For the bottom line, this you can freehand, but try and keep it evenly spaced from your top line. So now we can cut it off.
Jigsaws are great for cutting unique shapes. While the machine does the hard work, you simply need to steer it to cut out your design. Once the first handle has been cut out, simply use a pencil to trace out the second handle. This way, both handles look the same.
So now it's time to attach our handles onto our seating area. And really, it's not about accuracy, it's just about function here. So make sure that you assemble it close to where the tie will be underneath. Now, in order to secure it, I'm going to be using a pilot countersink bit, and I'm actually going to drill diagonal pilot holes and then screw it and glue it down.
Once you have drilled the pilot holes for your handles, simply secure them using wood glue and screws.
We're at that stage and we're almost ready to paint. What we're going to do, because we've got rubber material, we've got wood, we're going to use a universal primer before we actually go wild with our colors.
A universal primer is great when you need to paint a variety of different surfaces, like wood, rubber, and even plastic. A water-based primer not only dries quickly, but it's also easy to clean the brushes afterwards. Remember to always follow the recommended instructions on the relevant product's packaging. Once the 2 coats of primer has dried, we are ready to start adding some color. A water-based enamel top coat in red and yellow will give life to the seesaw. 2 coats will ensure proper coverage.
Now that everything is painted and dry, it's time for assembly. So I'm just going to put my tire around the edge here, and then we're going to drill some pilot holes and screw it together. So these little balls are actually just those rubber bouncy balls. I've literally cut them in half and painted them, and what a great addition to our project. I've added a little extra sparkle with 2 little eyeballs, and if you haven't noticed as yet, we've created a little face just to put a smile on those kids' faces. So now I'm just going to take a bit of glue and pop it into place, and that's it. I hope you guys have as much fun as I did today.